Hello, hello. I'm so glad we have Amy Balash and Joanna Fifner here today with us. So both of them are the co-directors of our student admission counselors. And Amy has a degree in psychology and a master degree in school counseling. She has supervised over 1,000 students, and she's a former high school district supervisor, and she's doing counseling for the high school students. And here we have Joanna Fifner as well. And I want to introduce her as well. She has a master's degree in education, a minor degree in English communication, and over 10 years of experience, and coached hundreds of students. She was a former student admission officer for college. She's a member of National Association for College Admission Counseling. Here you are.
Thank you.
Amy, can you start? Yeah, you can start to share your screen now.
So we wanted to speak with you today about the impacts of COVID-19 on the college admissions process. Mainly at this point, we're seeing it affect the juniors, so the graduating class of 2021, just because their timeline is the shortest at this point in the college preparation process as we get nearer to application season. So we're seeing some implications on testing for the ACT and the SAT, and mainly on college visits. So in regards to testing for the ACT and the SAT, as you have probably heard, many testing administrations have been canceled, mainly for spring, and now we are starting to see some of the summer dates being canceled. SAT recently announced that they canceled their June session. So at this point, what we are advising students to do in general is to stay the course when it comes to testing, just to go ahead and register for the next available session at this point, and also to keep an eye on ACT and SAT announcements, as they're likely to continue to announce alternative test dates. That's the general advice we're giving students. Obviously, this is highly personalized and highly individualized, so students may have other questions that factor into the decision of when to test, such as whether or not they've tested once before already, if depending on what schools they're applying to, if the schools are still requiring the tests and things like that. So POM counselors are working with students on a very specific basis to answer those questions, but in general, we're telling students to stay the course, just go ahead and sign up for the next testing registration date, and be vigilant and flexible when it comes to announcements that might be made by each testing organization. The second piece here is college visits. Most college campuses are closed at this point, or it's just not safe to or recommended to go on college visits. And a lot of students usually use this summer to visit colleges just to see the campuses and decide where they're going to apply. In general, we're telling students just to do as much research as they can online for now. If things open back up later in the summer, students can certainly go forward with college visits at that time. But for right now, we're working with students on tips and resources for how to research schools online, and still work to get a set list of schools in place by the start of senior year so they can work on applying. So speculation as to what's going to happen with the college admissions process in general. Some schools have already announced that they will be waiving their requirement for ACT and SAT testing, but there's many schools that haven't announced that, and there may be many more schools that don't choose to do that. So at this point, we are just going with what we know, advising students based on their school list how to proceed with testing, and just remaining vigilant and watching the news and watching announcements so we know how to proceed with this. Okay, Sherry, did you have any questions for us about admissions related to COVID?
I know a lot of students are worried at this time, and they also heard news from some universities that they would cancel the SAT, ACT requirement. So what's your suggestion for them? Because they were thinking if the schools are canceled, they don't have to prepare for that.
Right, so some schools have canceled, but certainly not all. So I think it would depend on the schools that a student's applying to, just to know how to go forward with that. If they were only applying to schools that had canceled it, I suppose they wouldn't have to continue testing, but I would still have other questions, you know, in terms of if they're planning to apply for external scholarships that might require it, or other schools that are still requiring it. So I think it really depends on your school list, and you have to be careful in researching, you know, what exactly your schools are requiring.
So I would say it's better to get prepared.
Possibly, just because at this point some schools have announced it, but I feel like so few have announced that they're waiving the requirement. And I would rather students, yes, be prepared and go forward with it, unless they're 100% sure that every school they're going to apply to is waiving that requirement.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
So Joanna, you have something to share with us too?
On this topic, I do not. Amy was covering this, so we have our next set of slides to share.
Okay, so please go ahead. Just share the new topic.
So the next piece we were going to discuss is the career exploration piece and major explorations. So Joanna and I will discuss that together. So in terms of career exploration is a very fluid process that can certainly take time, and it's very individualized based on the student going through it. So there are some students that we work with who know exactly what they want to do, and they know what they want to do early on, and they have that goal set in mind. And then we have other students who are still figuring it out, or just feeling very uncertain about what they want to do, and that's okay. So the most important thing to understand about career exploration is it's something that takes time, and it's something that requires research over time to determine, what a student's interested in doing. So we tell students it's never too early to start thinking about this and to start looking into your options. The best thing you can do as a part of career exploration is to get familiar with all the careers that are out there, and just expose yourself to the different options, so you'll have the ability to make a more educated choice when it comes time to choose a major. Some things that parents can do to facilitate this process is to just start talking about it with your students. Conversation is so important when it comes to talking about this, and it will likely be a conversation that gets repeated occasionally. You can begin by asking your student about their interests, kind of figuring out what they like, what they think they're interested in, and also touching on things such as what might you like to do professionally or for a big chunk of the week versus things you might want to do just as a hobby. You can also work with your students to begin talking about a list of school subjects that they enjoy, their activities that they enjoy, so they can begin to kind of understand trends and themes in their interests, and begin to identify those areas that they might want to pursue for a career. Oops. So once you've started to identify interests, and this is something that we work closely with our students with at POM. Once we've begun to identify interests, we start to look at the majors that connect with those interests. And from there, we begin to see what types of careers or professions could be pursued after obtaining that major. So this is kind of a process that we work through students with, identifying what your interests are. Are those hobby interests or professional interests? Then we move on to talk about some of the majors and careers that might connect with those things to help you, pursue your goals in terms of that. And Joanna's going to talk with us a little bit about, a little further about career exploration and major selection.
Thanks, Amy. So thank you. I was looking for that next slide. Thank you. So Amy mentioned that one of the best things you can do to get started is really just become familiar with the different careers that are out there. But that can be a little overwhelming because, as you probably would imagine, there are thousands that you could explore. So there are 16 recognized career clusters that we sort of categorize most of the careers you might have heard of into one of these clusters here. And in fact, I think we could safely say that all the careers you might have considered would be classified into one of these 16 that you see here. So you can read through, I won't read the list here, but you can see the career clusters that have been identified. And a lot of times when you start thinking about the things you enjoy or the school subjects that you feel strong in, you can begin to match those with the career clusters that there are. And this is just kind of how you can get started. So these are not specific careers we're looking at, these are categories. If you are strong in English, for example, you might think about the career cluster that's called Arts and Communications, or they call it Arts, AV, Technology, and Communications. If you're strong in science and math, of course, there's the STEM career cluster that you could explore. And so kind of looking at the broader categories is a good place to start rather than trying to decide early on exactly what you want to do. So especially in the early years of high school, 9th grade, 10th grade, and even into 11th grade, the most important thing is to start thinking about what type of career you'd want as opposed to what's the specific career that you're after. We at POM believe and we advise that there is a whole lot of exploration that has yet to be done senior year of high school and even into sometimes the first year of college. So we really work with students very carefully on this process. We never want anyone to rush into a decision about a specific career, but it's very important to start thinking about sort of these broader categories and which of those might suit you the best. If you could advance the slide for me, thank you. Couple ways you can begin exploring careers, and again, exploring those career clusters. Through POM, we do take an assessment of students and we ask them to complete a questionnaire, which helps us understand the things that interest them. And we use that to match them with potential careers. So that's one way. But there's also other things that we encourage students to do, including using other online databases. But it's important to use credible career information. One of the ones I refer students a lot to is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They've got some good information online about different careers. So online exploration is important, but like you talk about in school, it's important to make sure your sources are good. Also informational interviewing. So talking with folks who are already working in different professions. Usually people are very happy to talk with students about what they do, and they love to share what they've learned along the way and what they wish they had known upon getting started. So definitely setting up some interviews with professionals who are working in fields that might interest you. This is something you should do with a parent's permission, of course, but you can oftentimes find people's contact information online or through organizations that do the type of work you're interested in, and you can usually reach out and you just might be able to get a good conversation going with somebody who does a job that you would see yourself potentially doing. And then of course there's career fairs. So this is a place where they're oftentimes at colleges. So when you get to the college level, it's a great thing to do. You can talk with different employers who are looking for students that they could potentially even recruit eventually into their industry and into their business. So career fairs are another thing we encourage. That comes a little bit down the road, and usually those are more accessible to college students. But I have heard of, here and there some programs and career fair type events available throughout the country that are also targeted to high school students. So certainly that would be something to look into as well. Sherry, do you have questions for us on this piece?
Yes, I know we have a career cruising tool can help the students to identify their interest and also their passion. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of tool is that and how to use that for helping the students and the families to identify their future careers?
Sure, I can take that one, Amy, since I've got it here on the slide. That's actually what Sherry's referring to. The career cruising is that interest inventory assessment. So it's a great tool we use with our students that asks students to complete a survey, and what they're doing is rating how well they like different activities. And so it'll say, how much do you like? And I'm just going to give a few examples, and please know there are a lot of different questions that are covered. It's a very thorough assessment, but different questions that you answer, and you rate how well you like different activities. And I gave a few examples of those, and please know it's a very comprehensive survey. So I'm only going to give a few examples, but there are many questions. But it'll ask for different things like how well you like studying different school subjects, like different sciences, or how well you like studying math. And then it'll ask more specific things like, do you like helping your friends through their problems? Or do you like expressing yourself through art? So it might not be directly related to a school subject. It asks a lot of different questions. It then pairs you with the careers that hold the activities you enjoy most as central. So the jobs that align with the things you enjoy doing are the ones that will appear as your potential career matches. And that's a great tool. We love using that with students to help get the conversation started about career exploration. And like Amy said earlier, once you start identifying the careers that interest you, it's usually the next step is then thinking about the majors that are associated with those careers.
Awesome. Thank you, Joanna. One more question. So do you have a timeline for the high schoolers? What time they need to start doing this exploration and what time they should have some idea about what they want to do? And sometimes they have good idea about this, so can help them to know what the school to apply for, what the direction to go for.
I can take this one. Yes, we start working with students, and like I mentioned, it's really never too early to start exploring for careers, and just like I said, exposing yourself to all the different things that are out there and starting to get familiar with that. So we start students on that as soon as they begin with us, to make sure that they're starting that process, and we give them some guidance based on the feedback that they give us when we discuss the results of how they should proceed with that exploration process. We ask students to start, and we work with them to start identifying colleges sometime in their junior year. So it's helpful to have a good idea by then of what you might like to do as you're beginning to look into schools, just to ensure they have your correct major, especially if one of your top priorities is going to a school that has strength in certain programs. There are certain majors and certain programs where it benefits you more to know early on going into it that is something that you want to pursue. Other majors are a little bit more flexible and lenient because we just need to be honest with ourselves. It's hard to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life at 16 or 17. There are adults who don't know what they want to do. And so we talk with them about that if they're feeling unsure and how they can manage that responsibly as they start college and begin taking classes if they're not 100% sure what they want to do. And we talk about how to responsibly manage that process and make sure that the things they're potentially interested in aren't those things that it does benefit you to know going in. So we definitely individualize the process and work with them on that to make sure that either way, whether they know or whether they don't, they're prepared.
Thank you so much. Thanks both of you, Amy and Joanna.